meeting all the time now. How many people got a chance to go through the materials before class?
I did a little bit.
So how many people vote that we go through the module, the week's activities, just follow what's on campus?
Yes, miss, we can do that.
Okay. Right. So this week we are starting our discussion on the different types of expository essays. And we're starting off with analysis by division, which once you get the hang of, the other types of essays become a lot easier to do. Does this sound familiar to anybody, analysis by division?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
So who wants to tell me what they remember of analysis by division?
I think you were saying that it was a breakdown of a topic, and you give the example like if you would use an orange, and then you're going to break it down on what is or what type of orange, what color, stuff like that. I can't remember, but I think he was just giving a breakdown. So you say analysis by division is the breakdown of a specific topic.
Yes, yes. So for analysis by division, we take a large concept like an organization or an institution or something like that. So explaining how government functions, explaining how a university functions, how an international church organization might function, and so on. So we're taking this large unit whole, this large whole, and we're breaking it down into specific subsections so that we can explain how the entire thing operates. Right? So for example, let's look at a university. So a university has various moving parts. And to understand what a university actually does, it will help to understand what these individual parts do. So it might be difficult to explain comprehensively the concept of a university without explaining the different aspects or subdivisions of a university. So the first thing we want to do when we're presented with something big, fat, and complex is to find out what is the true function of this thing. What's the true function of the entire unit? We call that the controlling principle. So a university is meant to do something very specific. We want to find out what that very specific thing is. We call that very specific thing the controlling principle. The controlling principle then determines how you're going to break down this larger unit into its smaller parts that we call divisions, right? So in the Venn diagram, you see each division comes together to achieve that controlling principle. If you want to look at it another way, when we identify the controlling principle, we can then identify how we split up this big unit into smaller divisions, right? So let's say we're looking at a university and we want to explain how a university functions as an educational institution, right? What does that really mean? A university is an educational institution. So we will identify our controlling principle. So in this case, because we're looking at a university trying to explain a university as an educational institution, the main function then is to provide education, right? So that's our controlling principle. It is an organization, an institution that provides education. So now I want to figure out in what ways does a university provide education? So I came up with 3 divisions: academics, athletics, and administration. So these are my 3 divisions here. And I could further break down each division into smaller components, smaller parts. So in academics, I'm looking at classroom instruction, research, even public lectures and public outreach. In terms of athletics, I'm looking at sporting programs offered to students, physical therapy education, and health classes that might, again, be open to the general public. And in terms of administration, functioning in that to provide education, it helps students matriculate, so pay your fees, register for your classes, know where you're supposed to be when and where. And it also helps academics get research grants. It can also help with scheduling sporting activities. So administration then acts as a support system for academics and athletics. So all these different divisions, when they come together, they help a university provide education. So the idea is to find the controlling principle. What is this thing really about? Divide the whole unit based on those subdivisions, on the controlling principle to get what each subdivision in the whole is. So let's look at it. This is a sample. Oh, I didn't put that in here. Right, so this is a sample reading, and I will leave you to read this on your own. The nice thing about this sample is that it's annotated, so you actually see where they take the time to tell you what these different things mean, what they're doing, why they're there, and why they are where they are in the essay. So it helps you to break down what you're reading, and not just the content, but the structure of it. And that's very important because we are learning to write, and learning to write involves, I'd actually say, more reading than writing. And not just reading for content, but reading for structure. How does the writer actually do this? How does the writer communicate the message? Is that something I can do? Is that something that's appropriate for the message I want to convey? So to recap, and we have 2 weeks of analysis by division. So we're starting to wrap our minds around it now. We will continue the discussion next week. But in general, you're taking a large topic, like, say, the example we used was a university as an educational institution. We might look at how national security is run in Trinidad and Tobago, and so you're looking at You might look at police, army, Coast Guard, and how each of these then help national security ministry secure the nation. That's the controlling principle. So you're looking at a large, and it's usually something concrete, something we can experience with the five senses. And we're taking it and we're breaking it down into smaller components so that we can explain what it is and why it does what it does. Right? The next thing we're supposed to do this week, and unless the question is absolutely dire before we switch over to another topic, if you want to ask questions now about analysis by division, or if you want to hold it to the end of class, that's up to you. Any questions now?
No, miss.
No? Okay.
Not now, miss.
All right. So the next thing we're looking at is phrases and clauses. So before we talk about sentences, and I'm going to talk about sentences in a very, very scientific, clinical manner. So let's get some of the terminology down first, right? So phrases and clauses. Have y'all heard of, y'all know phrases and clauses? What's a phrase?
It's a part of a sentence.
Can we be more specific?
Let's say, if I say, I'm trying to think of an example. In other words, a phrase is like, it doesn't have a subject. It's just, I'm trying to explain it. It's,
You're halfway there. So it might not have a subject.
right. So if it's like, if you say, trees grow on hills. Let's see, what about the trees that grows on the hill? You know, it just doesn't, it's like part of a sentence. It doesn't have a beginning. I'm trying to explain it, but I know what it is. I'm trying to just bring it across. I don't know.
Stacey Ann, you raised your hand.
Subjects or verbs?
Say that again.
They don't have subjects or verbs.
Right. So, right. Thank you for the reading. So yes, both of you are right. It will not have either a subject or a verb. So it might have a subject but no verb. It might have a verb but no subject. Right? So let's skip that. Let's look at the definition here, right? So a phrase does not have both a subject and a verb. It's a group of words that has either a subject or a verb. So the tree is a phrase. The hill is a phrase. Went abroad is a phrase. So you're either missing a subject or you're missing a verb. Another way to look at a phrase is that it functions, is a group of words that functions as a singular part of speech, right? So key to remember, it doesn't have a subject, it won't have both a subject and a verb, and it usually acts as a part of speech. So you would have, for example, a noun phrase, which can also have could be a noun or a pronoun. So the tiny mouse. The tiny mouse acts as a noun. right? The most important thing in that phrase is the noun. So if you see the tiny mouse ran into the house, right? Tiny mouse is a noun phrase. Into the house is a noun phrase. The verb phrase was reading, so it acts as a verb. The adjectival phrase or adjective phrase acts as an adjective, adverb phrase as an adverb, and prepositional phrase as a preposition. So it will tell you what, how. It will tell you what, it will tell you the action, it would describe the noun, it would describe the verb or another adjective, and it will tell you where something is. Right? So you can't isolate the one word, it's the entire phrase. So what's the difference between a clause and a phrase? Anybody remembers?
The clause would have a verb.
Just a verb?
A verb and a subject, sorry.
Right. So unlike the phrase, the clause has a verb, a subject and a verb, right? So it's a group of words. So it's a group of words that has both a subject and a verb. There are two types of clauses: independent and dependent. We might also call them main and subordinate. Right? So we can take phrases and make a clause, but we can't take a clause and make a phrase without taking out a word. So we can piece together different phrases to make a clause, but you can't piece together clauses to make a phrase, right? So the first example, you have a noun phrase, our flight home, our flight time. The verb will be approximately 45 minutes. Or on behalf of the airline, we wish you a pleasant flight, right? So the clause has subject and verb. The two types of clauses. So when we talk about an independent clause, and I sometimes refer to it as IC because I'm lazy and I don't need to write out independent as a long word. Independent clause or dependent clause. The independent clause could stand alone. So if I go back to Camille's earlier example, the tree on the hill, the tree was on the hill, right? The tree was on the hill, or the tall tree grew on the hill. It has a subject and it has a verb and it's a complete thought. So it can stand alone, right? So when you encounter these clauses, you need to ask yourself, can it stand on its own? Is it a complete thought? If it is, it's an independent clause. On the other hand, a dependent clause cannot stand on its own. It needs an independent clause to become a sentence. And we call it subordinating clause, a subordinate clause, because it usually has less importance in a sentence than the independent clause. So depending on the information you put in either clause, we would consider it more or less important, right? Just to drive it home, so be very careful a lot of the times we get what we call a sentence fragment, either because you've written a phrase and not a clause at all. There's either not a subject or there's no verb, or you've written a dependent clause and not an independent clause. And a dependent clause usually starts with so a subordinating conjunction like because, or one of the linking words like after or until. So until I move is not a full sentence because it's missing information. And the until actually makes it dependent on something else. It signals to your listener that, or your reader, some more important information is coming. So this is a dependent clause. It's not a full sentence. Any questions so far?
No, miss.
So we learned about the building blocks, words, parts of speech, punctuation, phrases and clauses. Now let's start building something. Let us look at constructing sentences. In this module, we will explore types of sentences like simple, compound, and complex, and varieties of sentence construction or sentence patterns. Remember, the idea is to slow down the construction process and be deliberate. Also, what we covered in Module 1 will help you now in Module 2. We will also look at common errors writers make when constructing sentences, run-on sentences, sentence fragments, and mixed construction. After this module, you should be able to know the difference between simple, compound, and complex sentences, craft each type of sentence, construct sentences in keeping with sentence patterns, avoid common sentence errors. Please engage in all the learning materials and activities. At the end of the module, you will be quizzed to assess your progress.
You can ignore that. That was for something else.
You can reach a writing lab at writing.lab@utt.edu.tt or chat online with one of our coaches. Happy learning!
So I was taken from the writing lab. So we did cover punctuation, not so? And no, we did parts of speech, right? So yes, that will come in handy for when we're building sentences. So this is probably just a refresher, but there are 3 sentence types: simple sentence, compound sentence, and complex sentences, right? Do we remember what a simple sentence is?
Miss, one question before you go on.
Huh?
It's not supposed to have like compound complex.
Compound complex really is just when you take a compound sentence and you add it to a complex sentence, right? So knowing the three basic types of sentences, you could actually build and innovate as you need to.
No problem.
All right. So what is a simple, anyone remembers what a simple sentence is?
This is more like of an independent clue.
Yes. So it's a simple independent clause,
Close.
right? What about a compound sentence? Anyone remembers what a compound sentence is? Okay. Right. So
Miss, basically is the same thing as the independent clause. It's two independent clauses.
yes. So a compound sentence is an independent clause plus an independent clause. Right? And a complex sentence?
Yes. Mm. Let me see.
It's okay if you don't remember right now. We'll go through it again.
Excuse me.
Uh-huh.
It has an independent, it is an independent clause, but it has one dependent clause in it.
Yes, so it's an independent clause and a dependent clause. So for a sentence to be a full sentence, it must have at least one independent clause. That means it has to have a subject. And here you can see a variety of things that make a subject. Noun, pronoun, gerund. A gerund is a present participle verb that is acting as a noun. So running is a healthy form of exercise. Running in this instance is not the verb to run. It is acting as, it's naming an activity, so it's acting as a noun. So that's a gerund. Noun phrase, so when we looked at the tiny white mouse disappeared into the house. And or pronoun phrase, the pronoun that just slipped my mind to make up one on the spot. Ha ha ha. But obviously a pronoun phrase is a group of words where the most important information is the pronoun, or it acts like a pronoun, right? So the simple sentence has, it is an independent clause. That's it. It is one independent clause, right? So the boy cried. Canada is a rich country. The girl ran into her bedroom. Some students like to study in the morning, and so on. It is one independent clause. It has a subject, it has a verb, is a complete thought. Right? So the cat left. So we have a subject and we have a verb. Jacob's book is quite good. So we have a subject, Jacob's book, that's a noun phrase. We have the verb is, and we have our adjective, quite good. So a compound sentence is an independent clause plus an independent clause. And we join it either by a comma followed by a coordinating conjunction. So that's your for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. We can join the independent clause with a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb. Yes. Am I saying that right? Just slipped my mind completely. Right? So words like consequently, furthermore, however, indeed, in fact, moreover, nevertheless, then, therefore. So we join it with a semicolon. One of these adverbial phrases, adverbs, they're called conjunctive adverbs. They act like conjunctions. And a comma after the adverb and then the other independent clause. Or you can join two independent clauses with a semicolon. Now, the first example, joining with a comma and a conjunction, a coordinating conjunction, is very useful when you are making a comparison, for example. So, James is stupid, comma, and I am not. So we're making a nice little comparison there. So there's a definite link between the two independent clauses, right? So there's a little more separation. This time we're showing more of a contrast. So the first one could be either a comparison or a contrast. This one is definitely a contrast. So I am free tomorrow, semicolon. However, comma, I was intending to sleep in late. Right? So again, the sentences are related. So rather than just have two separate sentences, I link it because I want to show the relationship. And the semicolon, just using the semicolon, is when the two independent clauses definitely relate to each other. And you want the reader to read swiftly from one to the next, so I just use a semicolon. It was a hot day, semicolon. The plants all died, right? So I'm implying a very close link between those two independent clauses. The one exception you see here is if we are writing a compound sentence, but it's a series, right? So we're listing off a series of, and the series just happens to contain simple sentences. The dog barked, the cat yelled, and the rabbit chewed, right? Technically, all those three things are independent sentences. They're simple sentences, but we're writing it as a series. So we're listing off something. Here are some more examples. The cat left, but the dog stayed. So the simple sentence, the cat left, you see your subject, the cat, you see your verb, left. We have our comma and conjunction. We have our next simple sentence, the dog stayed. So we have our subject, the dog. We have our verb, stayed. Jill fell free, and we all knew why. So again, two simple sentences joined with a conjunction. A complex sentence, it's a little more complex. It needs one independent clause and one dependent clause. So A complex sentence would take either the dependent, then an independent, or the independent and then the dependent. So typically, when you start with the dependent clause, when he handed in his homework, right? And this is a dependent clause because it starts with when. When is a conditional word, so we're expecting some kind of information afterwards. So when he handed in his homework, comma, he forgot to give the teacher the last page. Now the important information here is he forgot to give the teacher the last page. That's why it's our independent clause. We're adding extra information and background by saying he was handing in his homework, right? If the dependent clause comes after the independent clause, we do not need punctuation. So the teacher returned the homework after she noticed the error. We do not need punctuation there, right? When you have we form dependent or subordinate clauses with what we call subordinating conjunctions, so because, since, and so on. So here's the formula. We take the independent clause, we use a subordinating conjunction or a coordinating adverb, and then the dependent clause. No need for punctuation. If we're starting with the dependent clause, we put a comma after the dependent clause, and then we go to the independent clause. So here are some more examples. Since the cat left, so that's your dependent clause, comma, the dog decided to stay. The other one, you have a simple sentence. I feel so much better, independent clause, after treatment, dependent clause. So now that we've gone through simple, compound, and complex, and you asked me about the compound complex, right? And if you follow the pattern, then the compound complex takes a compound sentence and adds a dependent clause, right? So it will have two independent clauses and a dependent clause. And that will make it a compound complex sentence. It really is just the merging of compound sentence and a complex sentence, right? So at least two independent clauses plus at least one dependent clause. Number's still wrong, right? So we use sentences in four main ways. We can make a declarative sentence, an interrogative sentence, an imperative sentence, and an exclamative sentence. We looked at verb moods. I think it's running together thanks to COVID. The first one is a declarative sentence. It's the most common. We are making a statement. It ends with a full stop, and it is the normal or standard way of constructing a sentence. Subject, verb, object, right? So when we discuss things like sentence patterns, simple, compound, and complex types of sentences, we're usually talking about declarative sentences. So these are sentences that make a statement. I am here. As opposed to an interrogative sentence, which main function is to ask a question. It ends in a question mark, and it uses what we call the interrogative verb mood. To make this kind of sentence, we switch around the structure of a declarative sentence. So the declarative sentence, it's subject, verb, and object or complement. For the interrogative, we switch it around. So we would say something, I am late. That's a declarative sentence. In an interrogative sentence, we go, am I late? So we would actually start with the verb. So to make an interrogative sentence, we start with an interrogative pronoun, the auxiliary verb, subject, and verb. So some examples, what are you doing? What is an interrogative pronoun? Are is an auxiliary verb. You is the subject. Doing is the main verb. In Trinidad, you need to say what you're doing. We might leave out the auxiliary verb. But in standard English, if we are writing, what are you doing? The other example, again, interrogative pronoun, how, auxiliary verb, did, subject, James, verb, the main verb, get, and then an adverbial complement, here. So we have switched it, the subject is no longer the first thing in the sentence, it's now about the third thing in your interrogative sentence. In the imperative sentence, usually ends with a full stop or an exclamation mark. And this is how we give an instruction. This might be the sentence you're most used to hearing from your parents or even your boss, right? This is how we give instructions. So we take the second person verb in a simple present tense. We might add a participle, we might add an object. Some examples would include things like sit down. So we start with the verb and we end with an adverb. Sit down. Stop the car. The car is the object, stop is the verb. Now in these, it works, the implied subject is you. So this form of sentence typically works in one-on-one conversation or one person addressing a collective you. You sit down. That's the deep formation of this sentence. But for the imperative, we don't have a subject, an overt subject. We don't write the subject. We start with the verb, sit down. And the last one, exclamative, it's an American word, so I don't say it well at all. Exclamative sentence. Here we're making an exclamation. We're showing surprise or other strong emotion. Usually ends in an exclamation point, hence the title exclamative sentence. And again, we change the structure of the declarative sentence to make this. So the formula goes, what, we have two specific interrogative pronouns that we will use. What, plus an adjective, plus the noun, plus the subject, plus the verb. So the verb ends up being the last thing in the sentence. How, plus an adjective or an adverb, plus the subject, plus the verb. So it will look something like this. What, interrogative pronoun, cool, adjective, shoes, noun, you, subject of the sentence, have, verb. What cool shoes you have? Or how, interrogative pronoun, slowly, adverb, James, the subject, drives, main verb. So how slowly James drives. If these were declarative sentences, it would be you have cool shoes, or James drives slowly. So you see how we change the structure to make these different types of sentences. Where the music gone? It was supposed to have sound. I don't know where the sound went.
Hello?
What? You went on a shopping spree?
Okay. That was supposed to have music and be slightly more entertaining, so I don't know what happened to this audio. So apologies for that. But in terms of looking at subject-verb agreement, it's one of the most common errors we make as writers. And is often that we do not consider what the real subject of the verb, of the noun, of the verb is, what's the real subject in the sentence, whether it's plural or not, and so on. So there are a lot of actually complex rules, as you saw in the video, and you could go through it again at your own pace and get familiar with it. The next thing we want to look at is pre-writing. There are 3 steps to writing an essay, and that would be pre-writing, drafting, and editing. So let's start with pre-writing. And a lot of the assignments we'll be doing from now on would include that pre-writing process. So when we talk about pre-writing, there's some steps to take. Important is picking a topic if you are not assigned one, especially. So picking a topic or understanding the topic that you've been given, brainstorming your ideas, and then outlining your essay. So the first one, picking your own topic. Or understanding the assignment you were given. So there are 2 ways. So either you need to come up with a topic all on your own, and the higher up in education you go, the more typical this will be. You need to find your own topic and discuss it. Or you have been given a question or a topic, and you need to make sure you understand what the question is asking you to do. So when we talk about picking your topic, always start with what you know. It's an old adage, it's almost a cliche, write what you know. But really and truly, if you start with a topic that you're familiar with, the process becomes a lot easier, right? You should know what it is about that topic that interests you. What about the topic should be important to other people as well. So you are writing for an audience, and when we talked about communication and the idea that communication comes from a sender to a receiver, and we are looking at writing as the medium you send the message through. So bear in mind, someone at the other end is going to read this. So it has to be something that other people would be interested in, not just yourself, right? So if you are thoroughly obsessed with brie cheese, it will make no sense if other people don't at least share some form of that obsession with cheese. Why write about it? No one's going to want to read it. It would not be important to other people. So when you're picking topics to write about and research or engage in, you want to pick a topic that is interesting to you and is interesting to your potential audience. If you look at the second scenario, you need to find out what the question is asking you to do, right? Every sentence sets up an expectation. There's something that you read it and you expect something to follow, or the sender actually expects you to respond in a certain way. So when you read your question, or it might be a statement, what are your expectations? What are the expectations embedded in the assignment, right? If you say go come up with a recipe for a pie, right? So you need to ascertain, is it a dessert pie? Is it a savory pie, like macaroni pie or potato pie? Is it like a beef pie, so it's actually a pastry? What kind of pie are we talking about? So we will need to look for clues in the instructions that tell us what kind of pie we're talking about. You need to do that before you can even answer, because you need to know what the question is before you can answer. So once you've picked a topic or believe you understand completely what the question is being asked of you, the next step in pre-writing is brainstorming. You can use mapping, listing, clustering, or free writing to do your brainstorming. So brainstorming really is just throwing out ideas. Do not assess if they are sane or wacky or doable. You throw out all the ideas you can come up with based on that topic. So it helps you start to really think about the topic, think about what you know, think about what you want to say. So we look at things like listing. Listing really is, I write down everything. I make a list of everything I know about that topic or everything that relates to that topic, and I list it out. Then from this list, I start to pick what might be a good idea to talk about, right? So if we're looking at, this week we're doing analysis by division. If we're looking at analysis by division, we will start with our controlling principle. And then we will start to list all the things that relate to that controlling principle. And that might help us come up with the different divisions we need to craft our essay. It will also help us come up with how we break down those divisions even further to explain them properly. So after we brainstorm, after we brainstorm, we want to outline our essay. And here we start to gather all the information into an organizational structure. So we want to know, what is the main point? What are the subpoints? And what should be discussed first, second, or third? So these are the main things you need to do, or the main reason you write an outline. What is the main point? The main point becomes your thesis statement. What are the subpoints? Each subpoint becomes body paragraphs. And then which one should be first, second, or third? What should I discuss first that will really engage people and bring them in and help explain? What's the most important thing? When we're doing a formal outline, it begins with the thesis statement, and then we simply outline the body paragraphs. So we do not need to plot out the introduction. We do not need to plot out the conclusion. We start with a thesis statement, and then we plot out paragraphs 1, 2, and 3. Each paragraph starts with its own topic sentence. So as you see here, the thesis statement has your claim or the main thing you want to discuss, and the supporting evidence or reasons for making that claim, right? So university functions as an educational institution because it provides academics, physical, athletics, and administrative support for educational pursuits, right? So I make a claim, or I'm making a statement that I want people to understand. So that is, universities function as educational institutions. And then I'm giving my reasons why, because they offer academics, they offer physical education, and they offer administrative support for these activities. My first topic sentence then should come directly from the reasons I am making my claim. So my first topic sentence would be universities offer academic education. And then I would spend all my time in my first paragraph explaining how universities offer academic education. I'm not putting anything about physical education. I'm not putting anything about administration in this paragraph. It is only about academics. Then the next body paragraph would be physical education, and this would only be about physical education. And then the third paragraph would be about administration, and again, it will only be about administration. So I have it here as a Word document. So whenever you need to write an outline, you can download this and put in your own information and use it as a template. That's why it's here. And here are a link to the different materials for this week. And this would be your assignment for next week. All right. And again, it's on Canvas, so you can review. So now let's open up for questions, clarification. So again, we will be spending time next week on analysis by division, but let's see where we are so far, what you need, what you might want some clarification on, and so on. So the floor is now yours.
Hi, Miss.
Yes?
It's nothing really pertaining to this evening's class, but how's the grading going on with the essays that we have submitted so far? Because if we're doing the right thing, or if we're not doing the right thing.
It's going. Admittedly, it's going slower than I would like it to. I haven't seen anything negative yet, and of course, I use if it's anything major, I would use announcements in Canvas. But I'm actually running behind, and I apologize for that. And I'll try and catch up over the weekend between today and Sunday.
Okay, miss.
Right. I see a question about the homework. So on Canvas, there are samples of analysis by division essays. So read at least one of the samples and then offer an analysis. So we are looking at identifying what the topic is, what is the point of writing the essay, what is it, so what is the thesis, how is it organized. So if you had to plot out an outline, how would you do it for that essay? What do you see most in the essay? What stands out most to you? Is it the language? Is it the structure? What strikes you most about the essay? And what do you think you learned and what do you think you can apply to your own writing from reading the essay, right? So it's really reading, there's in unit 2, if I didn't put it up, I would put it up before the end of the day. But in unit 2, there was supposed to be examples of the different expository modes. If I am running classes together, I do apologize, because I might be running classes together and not know it. But I have other samples I can put up before the end of the day, so you could read multiple samples. But there's at least one sample everyone can read, and you pick out what's the thesis, what's the overall topic, what's the thesis or main purpose of the essay that you're reading, how is it organized and structured, what is your major takeaway, both not just content but structure as well, and what do you think you learned from reading that will enhance your own writing. So like I said before, the first step in learning to write is reading, and then reading till your eyes fall out. You dust them off, wash them up, put them back in, and read some more. And it is not just reading for content. We need to know what is said, but we also need to know how it is said. So when you're developing as a writer and you come across an interesting sentence pattern, for example, or an interesting way of building evidence, building up your paragraph that you notice in another writer, is something you might want to try, right? For example, my dream is to one day write like Gordon Roulet, who's just a phenomenal scholar, but has a way of presenting complex arguments in straightforward and beautiful language. So not just what he's saying, but how he says it is impressive. How he writes it is impressive. So we will be reading a lot of samples, because by reading samples, you get a better understanding of what the essay is supposed to be. Do you have, for this class, a portfolio? I just see in the chat asking about if you're writing an essay. So in total, you will write, if I'm remembering this correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, it should be on the syllabus, but in total you will write 2 essays for your portfolio. And so we're building very slowly to writing, to writing a, I'm not sure what part is, I'm sorry. So I want to take it very slowly. The concept being that because we speak English, we think we communicate very well. We do not switch registers very often. And if you, as you're going into education, or if you're already in education, you've heard the complaint, people write like they speak. And part of the problem is that we don't pay attention when we're writing. We just write. We don't pay attention to structure. We don't pay attention to what our intentions really are and what we're trying to do. And so we just start writing. And so this is to slow us down and for you to approach writing in a very scientific, structured way, so that there is a difference between how you speak and how you write. Because we can speak off the cuff all we want. There's a lot of leeway. We don't usually expect a very formal register in speech, right? I know you don't have a presentation for this class, but when I mark presentations, I usually don't take off much marks for grammar, because I expect performance errors. I expect a more informal tone, because that actually makes the presentation more interesting. However, when you write, I do take, well, it'll be red type, not red ink, so it doesn't bleed as proficiently, but I do go through word by word, which is why it takes me so long to mark a lot of things, right? So yes, there will be an essay, at least one. My brain is foggy, so I'm not remembering proper details, but it's in the syllabus. It's what you have to do for your portfolio, right? Any other questions? Okay, but you still have to explain what Wattpad is. Let's do it a little different today. I want to go around and find out if there's anything you feel wasn't clear, it was a little muddy, you would like to go over, you would like extra information, either during class or posted to Canvas.
Miss, I don't know if it's a problem on my behalf, but I'm trying to get into some of the files on Canvas, and I'm not able to.
You're trying to get what on Canvas, sorry?
Some of the files in the folder.
Okay. Some of them are time sensitive, as in they're published with the modules. So they should be accessible through the modules when you're following through the modules. If it isn't, I have to make sure it's all published in time. And I will look at it after class and make sure it's published when it's supposed to. But usually if you just go to files, not everything is published, so you won't see everything, but it should be published as the module is published.
So the class that we had today, all the information that we saw on your screen,
it should
already
be
posted?
Yes.
All right, no problem.
Right. Someone is asking about the peer review. So the idea here is that when we edit other people's things, we become more skilled at seeing errors in our own writing. And so the peer review, really, if you were to mark that person's response paper, how would you mark it? What are you looking for? What constructive, preferably constructive criticism you can give the other person. So, you know, I notice you have a lot of green verbs, and maybe, you know, pay closer attention to your subject-verb agreement, or it is an interesting take on what you read, but I think you missed the main point or whatever, but be constructive with it, right? So what this helps is to train you. We are all going into education. This is something we will have to do. When our students turn in something, we will have to read it and assess it. So this is practice, one, for doing that, gaining that skill. And two, when you spend time teaching other people, you learn more yourself. You start to drive home the information in your brain because you have to use it to help somebody else. So that's the reason we have the peer reviews. The app, the Canvas app, automatically assigns. So if there are late submissions, if the submissions aren't all in, you might not see all your peer reviews on time. The Canvas should alert you when it is time to do the peer review, right? Oh, okay. I've never heard of it before. That's something to check out. Wattpad. That's online. So just type in Wattpad in your browser and you find it. Okay. Any other anyone else wants to talk about what might be muddy, they need clarification? So far, we've just finished our 3rd week, so.
Miss Sam, for the homework, right? Are we supposed to respond to anyone? Like for the peer, when you say peer review 3 students response papers?
Mm-hmm. So Canvas will assign three of your peers, and you will read their response papers and give your comments.
Okay, right. And that is for this assignment, homework 3, or in general?
In general. So I want to build in the practice of collaboration and collaborative writing. So with the explanation of the Wattpad, this is very similar. You submit your writing, your peers read it, and they give their feedback, preferably constructive feedback, and you could pick up things that you might have been missing that you didn't know to edit for. It can point out where I thought I was making sense, but apparently nobody understood what I was trying to say, so I have to go back and look at my method and why it might not be clear for other people what is going on here. And so on both ends, it helps you be a better writer.
Okay, and the readings for the ABD essay will come from the specific module, right?
Yes. So there should have been, and again, I apologize if I'm mixing classes, because I might be mixing classes, but there's supposed to be examples from week 2 when we talked about expository writing in general, and there were samples there, so you would get an ABD, at least 1 or 2 ABD samples there. And there's a specific sample in week 3 in this module that we just covered, right? So at the very least, there is 1 sample for you to read and assess, at the very, very least.
Okay, right. So you're saying we could choose it from the 1 sample that we just did, and the others from the previous week, well, from week 2.
Yes.
All right, okay.
Now just make sure that it's an analysis by division. It would also be called classification and division essay.
Okay.
Right? Some places call it a classification and division essay. Right. Again, I'll go and triple check, because I have these samples. If I did not post these samples, because I posted these samples elsewhere and I thought I posted it here as well. I ain't gonna lie. I have these 3 composition courses that are using pretty much the same content. So I believe I posted everywhere. I might not have, and I apologize if it's not up yet, but should be up by the end of the day. Right? Okay. Anything else unclear you want clarified?
Miss, can you give us a brief rundown of the points for the assignment or the ABD quiz?
For the response paper?
For the ABD assignment, the assignment for this module.
That is that's a hard question.
You gave us some points just now on how to go about writing the response in terms of the topic and the thesis and what to write about.
Okay. Right. So you want to include a brief synopsis of the essay. So write a summary of the essay. I thought you were asking how it was going to be marked on the rubric. Yeah, don't ask for that yet. Right. So what we're looking at, you want to write a brief summary of the reading, right? So this essay talked about the governing structure of Canada or whatever, right? What is the topic? What is the main point of the essay? So in other words, what's the thesis? So the difference between the topic and the thesis, remember the topic is the more general idea. The thesis is a specific take on the topic. How is it organized? So does it follow the 5-paragraph format? Where is the thesis located? And things like that. What stands out most to you about the essay? What is the most striking feature? It could be the writing. It could be the vocabulary. It could be the structure. It could be the reasoning. It could be whatever. Something that stands out to you about the essay. And what do you learn about writing from this type of essay? Right? So in other words, I noticed that because this essay had the thesis statement in the middle, it was more confusing than if the thesis statement was at the end of the introduction. Or I noticed that the person really covers only one topic per paragraph. So it was so much clearer to read. So, oh, that's what that means, or something like that, right? How do you learn to write from reading that essay? Right? Thank you for posting it in the chat. So I know this is y'all are doing a certificate or a diploma?
Certificate.
Certificate.
Right. So depending on how far you want to go after your certificate, even during your certificate, this kind of reading becomes very important. You know, when you need to do research, when you need to do anything of that nature. Even if someone hands you a contract or something, right? Reading between the lines, reading for what the purpose is, how it's structured, and how all that conveys the message is a vital tool to go through life with, right? And so for the peer review, you want to see if the person identified the topic, the thesis statement, how did the person, in the response, how do you agree, disagree, how accurate, do you notice anything about the grammar being used? Is it organized? Could have been organized better? And so on and so on. So you are then playing me and assessing your peers' work, right? So you're the instructor. How would you mark this if you were the instructor? right? I hope that makes it clearer.
Yes, Miss Tan.
Okay. Any other pressing questions? You want to end off on a positive note? Right, yeah. Anything else? Okay, major takeaways. Let's get 10 major takeaways, and then class is dismissed, I suppose, if you have no more questions. Yes, Lisa?
Miss, I don't have any questions. I just want to tell you thanks for clearing things up because honestly, like I never liked writing or even trying to reason or anything concerning essays. And I remember, well, my English, I think I got a 3. And one part of that, they said I got a C, I think it was expression. And I thought it really had to do with that essay thing. And I just want to tell you thanks really for clearing things up, making it sound so simple. And I definitely know I need to practice some more, but that's good information I got.
Okay. Thank you. It's not where you start, is where you finish. Right? We hear stories of Einstein. Einstein failed maths in secondary school. And then turned out to be a physics genius. So it's not where you started, it's how you finish. And often it is finding that personal connection or that willingness to do something that makes all the difference.
Definitely.
Right? So thank you for sharing. Anyone else? I have 9 more. 9 more to go.
Well, Miss, to me, it's just interesting that the amount of English we didn't learn when we thought we passed CXC and said, well, okay, yes, I have English in a 1, in a 2, in a 3, I have it down, but it's just so interesting and they have so many different parts and so much more to it than what we thought we did in high school.
Yep. As you move up, it gets more complex. Right? You will learn about, I think if you all are doing educational theory, they will talk about scaffolding and the idea that we build knowledge. So it's like, mounting a scaffold, it keeps going up. So what you learned previously becomes the base for what you're learning now, and so on and so on until you pile very high, right? And it's always good to, even if you're looking at language, at English, something we speak every day, but we can always improve. So thank you. Priya shared in the chat, so I'm looking for 7 more. You could include just, what you've experienced so far. Doesn't have to be this week in particular. We've done 3 weeks now, so. Yes, Stacey Ann? Don't forget to unmute.
Yes, miss. Right, where you would have spoken about the semicolon joining two independent clauses. Like for years, I thought a semicolon was just a list of. So that was really helpful.
Mhm. Right, thank you. That's one of the most common mistakes people make. Semicolons and commas, we mix them up all the time. So thanks for pointing that out to the class. 6 more. Okay, 5 more. I got another. Oh, look, I have comments in here. All right, 3 more. Okay. We're down to 2 more. I can get 2 more people to say something. Okay. Right, so I got my 10 comments. Most of them were in text. So last round of questions, if there are any questions before we leave. I stick to my theoretical guns. After 90 minutes, people's brain turn to mush. I don't care how focused, how intelligent, or how willing you are, you start to lose attention. So we've hit the 90-minute mark. Go over the stuff on Canvas at your own pace, absorb, read, jot down any questions that you might have, and then we will meet again next week. Okay?
Miss?
Yes?
Outside of the classroom, how do we, I tried contacting you a couple times, but I didn't get in contact with you. So outside of the classroom, what's the best time to try and get you?
Okay, I am available for phone calls between 10 and 4, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. WhatsApp chat, as in typing, messaging, between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. every day. Right, so I do not take calls after 4 p.m., mostly because I teach in the evenings. And Tuesdays I have morning and afternoon classes, so I'm out all day. Well, I'm booked all day, right? But typically Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. My number should be on the syllabus. I'm also part of the WhatsApp chat. I just don't join in all the time. I just mako in silence. So you can WhatsApp me. If it's a burning question, if it's an emergency, and you have no other choice, then WhatsApp or call, but 10 to 4, right? I take phone calls 10 to 4. That's it? Oh, I put it in the wrong place, that's why. 3, 4. There we are. Right. So if there are no other questions, nothing needs clarifying right now, nothing pressing, The discussions should be open until December. They extend past class time. So if you didn't get to do the discussion before class, you still have the opportunity to participate in the discussion after class, right? So there are no other questions right now. Thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next week.
Okay, Miss, you have a good night.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Bye. Miss, I have a question quickly. In regards to the homework, right? The topic. When you say you have to say what the topic is, you know, sometimes the essays would usually have the topic to the top. Are we required to, like, when we read it, to put more, say more of what we think the topic is besides what is written on the essay?
Not more than. So as we say, usually the general topic is indicated in the title, as well as like the opening sentences in your introductory paragraph, right? So really just summarizing, this article looks at different types of friendships, or the different subcategories of education, or something like that, right? So the main topic is education. The thesis is what you're actually saying about that topic, right? So if my main topic is education, my thesis might be education is achieved through study, exercise, and practice, right? So the topic is education. The main idea of the essay is how they are addressing education. And if it's a formal essay, usually it's the end of your introductory paragraph. So it's pretty easy to spot, right?
Okay. Thank you.